Tonight, ready to roll, a sleek new General Motors ready to roll out of bankruptcy court. I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, a graveyard horror story. Workers accused of digging up the dead and reselling their graves.
There should be really a special place in hell for these graveyard thieves.
The best and worst of America's hospitals, why the hospital you choose may well determine your odds of living or dying. And baby skates. We've got the cutest little baby skates.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. It is the most anticipated rollout ever for General Motors. Not a new car or truck this time, but a whole new company. GM is expected to emerge from 5 weeks of bankruptcy by tomorrow, and it will be much leaner. 4 fewer models and fewer workers as well. In fact, CEO Fritz Henderson will announce 4,000 more white-collar jobs will be cut, and GM will have new owners. You. The old General Motors lost more than $80 billion in the past 4 years. Now it's counting on $50 billion in government bailout money to lead the new company to profitability. Here's our business correspondent, Anthony Mason.
As it emerges from bankruptcy, the once mighty General Motors Corporation will become the smaller General Motors Company. Half its brands are being sold off or phased out, leaving only Chevy, Buick, GMC, and Cadillac. And the new GM reportedly is considering changing its logo background from blue to green to emphasize its commitment to smaller, more fuel-efficient cars. The United States Treasury will be the company's biggest stockholder. The American taxpayer will own more than 60% of the new GM. And the Obama administration has picked a new management team. Fritz Henderson remains as GM's interim CEO. Former AT&T chairman Ed Whitacre will become GM's chairman. And design guru Bob Lutz, due to retire, has been asked to stay on. But the government wants new blood throughout the company.
How that organization unfolds is really going to be the demonstration as to whether or not there'll be a new GM or it'll be just a smaller, same old GM.
The government's already pumped more than $30 billion into GM and will pay up to another $20 billion by the end of this year to get it through this reorganization. Katie?
So, Anthony, will the government be effectively running GM?
Well, essentially it has been for a while now, Katie. I mean, remember the administration picked this new management team. It's going to pick the new board of directors. The president says he has no interest in running GM, but his auto task force monitors every major move that GM makes.
And how long will taxpayers own the company?
That's the big question here. Very hard to say. And now the government says it wants to get out of the car business as quickly as possible, but they've got to wait till GM is running smoothly again. And in this economy, that could be a while.
And finally, Anthony, what about warranties?
Yeah, the big question for everybody who's got a car. Here's what GM is saying right now. First, it's going to continue to honor warranties for vehicles sold before and during bankruptcy. Second, it will honor lemon law claims. And finally, it will continue to service any brands like Pontiac that may cease production. So, new company, same service, they're claiming.
All right. Anthony Mason, as always, Anthony, thanks so much. Our next story tonight is nothing short of outrageous. Imagine finding out someone dug up your loved one's final resting place, removed the body, and then resold the grave. That's what the police say was going on at a historic black cemetery outside Chicago. 4 workers are charged with digging up and dumping as many as 300 bodies. Cynthia Bowers has the story.
Hundreds of desperate and distraught family members descended on Burr Oak Cemetery this morning demanding answers.
I want to see did they disturb it. Just got off.
News that their loved ones may have been removed from their graves, their remains dumped in piles or stacked beneath ground was beyond belief. Police accuse an office manager and 3 grave diggers of carrying out the sickening scheme.
It's a whole new dimension that shows us what lengths people would go through for financial gain.
As much as $300,000 over the last 4 to 5 years by reselling the burial plots as they moved remains around. The horror uncovered only after guilt-ridden co-workers came forward.
I've got the marker, so it's no mistaking where he was, and it's not there.
Linda Foster says this nightmare makes her feel as if her dad is dying all over again.
There's really nothing you can do. Is he over there in a mass burial? Who knows?
Gwendolyn Hicks, who can't find her son Christopher's grave, says she suspected for a long time something was wrong in this 64-year-old cemetery.
Where are they putting our bodies? The place never expands. Where were they putting the bodies?
This is about much more than profound personal pain. This is also a desecration of black history, because for years this was the only cemetery around Chicago where African Americans could bury their dead. Lynching victim Emmett Till's body lies here, as does singer Dinah Washington and boxing legend Ezzard Charles, as well as thousands of lesser known but no less loved.
There should be really a special place in hell for these graveyard thieves.
These workers allegedly also destroyed records, making identification next to impossible.
Nobody deserves anything like this ever to occur to them, and we're trying to bring closure, but it's going to take a long time to do that.
Which means many families may have a long wait before they can rest in peace. Cynthia Bowers, CBS News, Alsip, Illinois.
In health news, federal officials said today states need to get ready to administer a vaccine for the H1N1 flu virus. At least 1 million Americans have been infected with the virus that's blamed for 170 deaths nationwide. $1 billion has been set aside to make the vaccine, and several major drug companies are working to have it ready by mid-October, just in time for flu season. Also today, a new report is out that says your chances of surviving a serious illness could depend on where you receive treatment. And there is a big gap in the quality of care. For example, at the best hospitals in this country, only 11% of patients die from heart attacks, but at the worst, it's nearly 25%. Nancy Cordes has more.
The findings were based on the most comprehensive study of its kind. 1 million patients at 4,600 hospitals. Medicare researchers discovered that 1 in 4 heart failure patients were back in the hospital within 30 days. 1 in 5 heart attack and pneumonia patients.
Not only do 1 out of 5 patients come right back into the hospital, most have never seen a doctor from the time of release to the time they come back. That's not good medical care.
And because care can vary widely, the government has put all that data online so patients can see how their hospital stacks up on everything from nursing care to blood treatments. A couple clicks on hospitalcompare.hhs.gov revealed that our closest hospital at George Washington University gave surgery patients their antibiotics promptly 96% of the time, aspirin to heart patients on arrival 100% of the time. But it had a worse than average readmission rate for heart failure patients.
It did surprise me because we do so well on the direct care measures.
Dr. Gary Little is the hospital's medical director.
It makes me want to look at the whole system and to see where the ball is being dropped.
And that is the main goal of this data, to give hospitals the tools for the first time to see how they measure up to their competitors.
It's a wealth of information that'll make us all better shoppers and put pressure on hospital management to do better.
And doing better could save the healthcare system a lot of money. Medicare alone estimates it spends about $17 billion a year on all those heart patients and pneumonia patients who keep getting readmitted to hospitals again and again, Katie.
All right, Nancy Cordes. Nancy, thanks very much. Dr. Jennifer Ashton is a CBS News medical correspondent. And Jennifer, should you actually use this report when you're seeking out treatment at an area hospital?
Not necessarily, Katie. You know, all hospitals might not be equally good or bad at everything. So if you have a choice, you might want to go to one hospital for a hip replacement, but choose another for your breast biopsy.
So how should you then, if you don't want to rely totally on this report, how should you choose the best hospital?
The ratings are a big part of the equation, Katie, but you also want to find a good doctor that you trust, who works with a great nursing staff, who can give you personalized attention. That might be at a big hospital, but it also might be at a smaller community hospital.
So there are a lot of factors, and there are other things like infection rates, which might have an impact on a hospital a patient potentially chooses. Will we be hearing more about things like that in the future, you think?
Absolutely. We've heard about it in the past, and we will continue to hear in the future about hospital-acquired infections, things like falls, medication errors. All will be looked at future outcome studies.
All right, Dr. Jennifer Ashton, thanks so much. For more tips on how to find the best hospital for you, you can go to our partner in health news, WebMD.com, and search choosing a hospital. Meanwhile, overseas, the violence did not stop in Iraq when American troops withdrew from cities last week. Today, dozens of Iraqis were killed in bombings blamed on insurgents trying to undermine the government. The deadliest attack was in the north in Tal Afar. A suicide bomber blew himself up at the home of a police investigator. Then, as bystanders gathered, there was a second blast. 38 people were killed, 66 others were wounded. Coming up next, President Obama shakes hands with Libya's Muammar Gaddafi, and that may have been the high point of the president's day at the G8 summit. One of the guests invited to attend the G8 summit in Italy is Muammar Gaddafi of Libya. And there was a remarkable moment today as Barack Obama became the first American president to shake hands with him. Gaddafi was once a prime sponsor of terror attacks, including the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103. 6 years ago, he renounced terrorism and abandoned his nuclear program, and he's been welcomed back into the world community. Meanwhile, the real business of this summit is to reach an agreement on measures to reduce global warming. But as Chip Reed reports, President Obama didn't get what he was hoping for.
Arriving a bit late for the group photo op in L'Aquila, Italy today, the president showed yet again he's the most popular leader here. Being well-liked, though, doesn't necessarily translate into influence. The president came here hoping to forge consensus on an aggressive response to global warming.
Ice sheets are melting. Sea levels are rising. Every nation on this planet is at risk.
But in the end, there was disappointment as the gap between rich and poor nations proved impossible to bridge, just as it has for years. While the 8 major economies agreed to cut greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050, the 9 developing nations, including China, refused to adopt specific limits, fearful that cutting emissions too much will hurt their growing economy.
It is no small task for 17 leaders to bridge their differences on an issue like climate change.
There was some consensus. The nations unanimously agreed to try to keep the average global temperature from ever rising higher than 3.6 degrees above what it was 100 years ago. And some leaders said they're relieved that President Obama is here instead of President Bush.
How welcome it is to see the return of U.S. global leadership on climate change.
Tomorrow, the president comes here to Rome for a private meeting with the Pope. We're told it will be a frank discussion covering serious issues from global poverty to abortion. Chip Reed, CBS News, Rome.
Turning to the economy now, the unemployment picture continues to worsen, and that tops tonight's CBS MoneyWatch.com notebook. The government says more than 500,000 people signed up for unemployment benefits last week. They joined a record 6,880,000 already collecting. And more job cuts are coming. ComAir says it expects to furlough as many as 100 pilots by the end of the year. It grounded nearly 300 last October. With the economy struggling, Americans are not spending. A report today says store sales in June were down more than 5% compared to the same month last year. The government says the number of homeless is holding steady at around 1.6 million, but that number now includes more families, nearly 44,000 more, and more people from suburban and rural areas. And the bill is in for the Michael Jackson Memorial. It cost Los Angeles nearly $1.5 million, and the city is calling that a success because estimates ran as high as $4 million. Most of the money went to pay for 4,100 police officers ready for the huge crowds that never materialized. Meanwhile, Speaker Nancy Pelosi today ruled out any House resolution praising Jackson. Coming up next, the impact of the recession rippling all the way to where the dolphins swim. We're now into the 20th month of this recession, and it's global. Never have the world economies been so dependent on each other. In our series, Financial Family Tree, we followed the ripple effects of this recession from Florida to the West Coast across the Pacific and back to the U.S., then down to the Caribbean, where we pick up the story tonight. Here's Seth Doan.
They spike their cakes with rum, but cannot find a way to spike sales.
We used to bake 15,000 rum cakes a week, and now we're down to 10,000 a week.
That's quite a drop.
Yes, it is.
On a good year, Tortuga Rum Company on the island of Grand Cayman took in $20 to $25 million. This year, profits are down, and owners Monique Hamady Simmons and her husband Marcus have had to lay off 40 people. That means they're spending more of their own time at work and less with the family, something not overlooked by their kids.
She says, "I'm coming home late. You guys go to bed."
You hear that from your mom now, more than you used to? The cakes are Cayman's biggest export, but on-island sales are important and dwindling too. The gift shop at Dolphin Discovery carries the cakes, but had to cut back their order from 30 cases a month to just 20.
So people need to choose between, sometimes between a photo with the dolphins or a rum cake. So
your rum cake sales are down a bit?
Like 20%.
The numbers for the main attraction have taken an even bigger dive. It costs $100 to swim with the dolphins, and revenue is close to $100,000 per month less than what they'd planned.
It is a luxury. It is not for everyone.
Luxuries at Dolphin Discovery are out. The pool is cleaned by hand. Last month, they had to close 1 day a week to cut overtime. Carlos Moreno, the GM, made cuts in his own life too. Personal dive classes are on hold. And that means a dip in dive bookings for folks like Nick Buckley. His business, Deep Blue Divers, is down at least $16,000 a month. On this day, a last-minute cancellation.
People not coming.
Because of the expense, kept this boat empty.
We've got 2 or 3 boats over here, which usually would have people on heading out to the wall. Well, young lady, Lunya, how are you?
Hey.
Looking good?
Nick says he can still afford to be friendly, even if back at the shop, he cannot afford as much merchandise. He used to place clothing orders each quarter of $3,000. The last one was just $300.
We're trying to condense it to the best-selling sizes, medium, large.
It sounds like you're having to be more flexible, and then the next supplier is having to be more flexible too.
Right.
That supplier is Spencer Antle of West Palm Beach, Florida. With Nick's orders down, Spencer's sales take a hit.
Nick can't afford to keep the stock that he used to, but we'll do whatever it takes to help him.
Spencer's $3 million island company has doubled in value every year since he started 6 years ago. This year, growth's been flat.
So there's a definite downturn, but there's there's an upside to it too.
With wholesale clothing piling up in his warehouse, Spencer saw an opportunity to move some of his product by opening his own retail stores.
To put your head in the sand and just wait and hope to God nothing happens to you is not the right way to go.
For now, Spencer's banking on the sand, opening a shop on Nantucket, hoping the wealthy island will offer shelter in an economic storm. Seth Doan, CBS News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
And next week, we'll continue the story on Nantucket, where an electrician is going through a kind of financial shock. And if you'd like to see more on this series, including segments you may have missed, you can go to cbsnews.com. And now to a rare birthday celebration for the rarest of beasts. Tyshawn, the giant panda, turned 4 today, and his caretakers at the National Zoo in Washington thought it worthy of a treat, a birthday cake made of bamboo and beets. Tyshawn is the only panda born at the National Zoo to survive more than a few weeks, and now he's a teenager, at least in bear years. And coming up next, they are the hottest thing on wheels on the web. And can you believe this? According to a Pew survey, more than 1 out of 5 adult Americans still don't use the internet. What are they missing? Mark Phillips, bring on the skating babies.
It's a simple formula. Take babies, put them on skates, add music, watch the internet hits take off.
the hip it to the hip hip, hop it, you don't stop, the rock it to the bang bang boogie, say up jump the boogie to the rhythm of the boogie.
The latest viral ad sensation has become the talk of the water cooler crowd, which is just as well as it's for a French bottled water company. Over 6 million hits since its release last weekend, almost 3 million in the U.S. alone. It's rolling toward rarefied territory, the 20 million plus hits that only the lucky few viral ads get to. But in the viral ad business, you've got to be good to be lucky.
This is the baby for that particular shot.
Okay.
So this baby was shot in a studio in Prague.
The babies could barely walk, let alone skate. Ludo Feely and his team in London turned them into roller dancers.
They would have rocked the baby gently backwards and forwards with that particular breakdance move in mind.
I see. And then filmed a professional dancer doing the moves, and then programmed a computer-generated baby's body to do the moves, and then taken that baby's head from Prague and attached it to the dancing body, and put it all together over a park scene shot in Melbourne and made to look like Manhattan. Yet even with this kind of technology, it doesn't always work.
It's only really 1 in 50, 1 in 100 that have the amount of success as this ad has.
Cute kids help.
Do you feel a kind of attachment to these kids once you've disassembled them and then recreated them?
You can't get too attached to them.
But the rest of the world already has. Mark Phillips, CBS News, London.
Weird. And that is the CBS Evening News for tonight. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
You don't stop, rock